Howdy, 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 and thank you for joining me on this Sunday night. How's everybody doing tonight? Let's see who all we've got up in here. Looks like we have Cupcakes Corner with American Cupcake, Laura Waldy. Great live stream. Okay, thank you, Laura. Dusty Soda Fountain Dispenser Pop Bottle Cap Cracker, whichever name he's going by today, and you'll be seeing Dusty tomorrow. Tomorrow night, I am going to be doing my next installment of Cult Watch. We are going to be having Dr. Christine Marie, and she is one of the leading doctors who's helping out the FLDS survivors, giving a voice to those survivors and helping them get over the traumas and trials of being members of the FLDS. So that should be a great live stream. We'll have Dusty there. Dusty also knows Dr. Christine Marie quite well. So we're going to be having a real good one with that one. DJ Nico, what's up? Nikolai, sorry. Olson, Selena, Lisa Robinson, Mischief Managed, who was, I bet Mischief was wetting her undies there thinking she's going to be the only mod tonight, weren't you, Nancy? Clearwater Chad, who the heck is that guy? I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Lisa Robinson, Dusty, all right. Mandy Gonzalez is in the house tonight. Joe Gerst, what's up, Joe? Anaphylaxis. So see, you just inched it out. You thought you was going to be the only one here. Grand Theft Hoopty, how you doing tonight? Chris on the drums. Benebeck is in the house. Cajun Mama, how you doing tonight? Doug, what's going on, brother? Let's see here. Davey, hey Mama Mischief. All right. So make sure we're not missing anybody here. Oh, and Scooter Mom's here. And if you haven't been, make sure you get over there and check out Scooter Mom. She usually goes every Sunday before I do. Does a real great one, channel over there. Does a lot to help out the smaller channels. Janelle, how are you doing tonight? Marilee. All right, make sure we're not missing too many folks here before we get started with this. Nissa, how are you doing tonight? So, as you know how it works on Sunday nights, as always, we have our good friend Clearwater Chad is here with us tonight. How we doing, Chad?
Great, Poe. How you doing?
Doing good, sir. Doing good. How's the weather forecast looking for us tonight?
Oh, I actually failed in my duties. I didn't come up with one, but it's probably in the mid-70s today in Buffalo. Pretty nice today.
You know, they got this thing called Google. You could check that real quick.
I was actually not feeling good, Poe. I didn't dot all my T's in my I's, and I was kind of taking a nap before the show.
Well, Marilee was wondering if you've been eating glue again.
I could have been. I know that the one person that was eating glue, according to Stutter and John, is the Deuce Payer in my videos.
Oh, wow.
That's what the reference is.
I think we had a pretty good one last night talking about the old Stuttering John guy. That was a pretty interesting talk.
Oh, that was a blast. People love that. I
can't wait till Saturday night and we do a weekly wrap up of what he's been doing throughout the week. This guy, I'm telling you, if I can get him on here, my goodness, I got to find out what's going on because I can barely tolerate 10 minutes of his live streams.
Well, you're more of an internet sleuth than me. He's hard to contact. These people don't have public emails, Poe.
Oh, I went through his Facebook, tried getting hold of him there. I've got no response. I got like the what do you call that? The typical they have a set response that comes out. John Starr's dark branded shirt. He loves glue.
Hey,
so let's see here. And Nikolai, weather report for John Coping, Sweden for Chad, 13 Celsius and cloudy, 2 a.m. Chad, you promised to eat less duct tape. You can wrap things up smoother. There you go.
I've been failing, I know.
And everybody, make sure you say howdy to my good friend Dave from Gotta Love Thailand. That's
the glue.
Great channel over there. His channel's literally called Gotta Love Thailand. Does some great content out of there. Real good guy. You've seen him on the channel. He's been here as a guest talking about living abroad. I'm going to have to get him back here pretty soon so we can follow up with that and start talking some more about the actual life experience over there in Thailand. And I've got some other folks. I got some folks from Japan that are going to be coming on. I got some folks from, a lot of different countries that normally you wouldn't associate with living there. Most people think of them as, basically vacation places. Doug, let's see. I should have stopped sniffing glue airplane. There you go. So Chad, what do you know about the Browns Chicken Massacre?
Um, very little, Poe. I did gloss over it last week, but I forgot most of it. Um, yeah, very little.
All right. It's all right. Believe me, I had a crazy week myself. I wasn't quite so prepared for one of the things we had. With everything that's been going on, it's understandable. I mean, we've all got lives. Joey is not going to be joining us tonight. He is having technical difficulties, but he will be on Saturday. And if we have anything else come up during the week that we can bring him in on, then we're going to have Joey in on there. So. For everybody who was watching to see Joey C, he's not going to be here tonight, unfortunately. So, all right. So, on January 8th, 1993, in Palatine, Illinois, there were two robbers that went into a place called Brown's Chicken. And in a robbery that's, I say it's a robbery gone bad. But basically, Brown's Chicken is like your local family-run chicken joint. We up here in Michigan, we got places called Chicken Shack. Every area of the country has their own like family-run kind of place. That's kind of a jewel kind of place that people love to go to. But the thing is that when the robbers went in, they went in there and they did just something absolutely horrendous. They killed all 7 of the people that were in there. And that included the owner, 50-year-old Richard. And I'm going to try to pronounce the name without chewing it up. Ellenfelt, his 49-year-old wife, Lynn, and 5 employees, 46-year-old Guadalupe Maldonado, 16-year-old Michael Castro, 17-year-old Rico Solis, 32-year-old Thomas Menz, then 31-year-old Marcus Nelson. Castro and Solis were both high school students. They were working there part-time. Let's see. All of the victims had been killed in the 2 walk-in freezers. Let's see. Oh, wow. Lynn Ellenfelt also died because her throat was slashed open before she was shot. And guess how much they got away with?
Probably under $100.
They got $1,800 to $1,900.
Jesus.
They killed 7 people for that little amount of money. And if you look at today's equivalent, it's going to be roughly almost $4,000 that they walked out of there with. And they took 7 lives in the process of doing that. What is even more bizarre is this case actually brought about task force work in a lot of the Illinois, Chicago area kind of cities where they didn't have they didn't have the big detectives bureaus and things like that. Chicago, of course, has a huge investigation squad and things. They actually have people who are assigned to nothing but homicide. But in this one, you're talking about a smaller city. They didn't have the resources that they need. And by doing so, all the other departments came together, creating a task force. Now, I've talked about that when I was a detective. I worked with the Downriver Consortium, and that was basically a task force where we all got together and we all pooled all of our resources as detectives, and we worked cases together, the higher profile cases or the cases that were, say the auto theft kind of things, the narcotics. We all came together and we worked together as a unit. And the great thing about that is when you have multiple officers working the same case like that, you can have one walk up and take a look at a scene and pick out 3 or 4 different things that they see that could be evidence. Someone else walk up into the same spot, look at that scene and see 3 or 4 different things that they could see as potential evidence or ways to find out. Now, what's really insane with this one is it took 9 years for them to come about with catching the people who had done this. And the people who were eventually captured were eventually found out, tried, and convicted and serving multiple life sentences. Juan Luna, He is 50 years old. He's 50 years old at this time. And then you have James Degorski, and he's 52 years old. It says that Juan Luna was from Zacatecas, Mexico, and that James Degorski was from Chicago, Illinois. But it's very interesting because there are different stories as to how this came about, that they were actually caught and convicted. On one hand, you have folks saying that the girlfriend of either Luna or Degorski, there was some kind of something happened between them, and the girlfriend ended up ratting him out. Others say that it was a partially eaten piece of chicken. That was what's really interesting is that the department was smart enough take that piece of evidence and freeze it. Someone within the department said, let's hold on to this, let's freeze it, because once the technology comes about, then we're going to be able to do something with this. They had a lot of foresight going on with that. So I'm going to show you a couple clips here. Chad, first off, what are you thinking so far?
Well, I'm glad they finally, like you said, I'm glad they finally got the people, even though it took so long. And that was really good thinking to freeze the evidence. And, so nowadays we have the DNA, which they maybe didn't have in the 80s.
Right. It's like we've been saying, and we've been talking about in a lot of these, technology is literally coming about in such a way that it is absolutely ridiculous. They're able to do things nowadays with advancements in technology that you never would have known. Now they've got things like touch DNA, where they can literally pull DNA from just contact touch, just from skin cells left on a scene. So, all right, let's get into the first video here. And this one is going to be from CBS Chicago. And this was from 1 year ago.
30 years ago.
Detailing what happened there. So if I can get it to stop. All right, here we go, folks.
It was 30 years ago tonight, one of the most notorious murders in the Chicago area's history.
In the end, the Brown's Chicken Massacre in Palatine left 7 people dead. The 2 owners and 5 employees were found in the freezer of that restaurant that was later torn down. The 1993 murder sat cold for 9 years until the killers, Juan Luna and James Degorski, were tried and convicted, both sentenced to life in prison. A break in the case came when a former girlfriend of Degorski's approached police with information about the killings. The murders were motivated by robbery, but the proceeds from that robbery amounted to just about $2,000.
So, like I was talking about, there's a lot of speculation as to how the case came about, how it finally got solved. And what they did was, it was the girlfriend of one of the suspects came forward and gave information to the police. The police were able to go back and they were able to look at that piece of evidence that they had, that half bitten, one bite taken out of a piece of chicken, and it was discarded there in the restaurant. And they were able to take that and they were able to pull DNA from it. They also were then able to go after Degorski and get his DNA, which came up as a match. And that's how they came about and got the convictions. So the next one we're going to show here is from ABC Chicago.
It happens.
And it is detailing a little bit more than what the first one showed, but this one goes in a little bit deeper into what happened, how they finally came about and got the conviction on it.
It happened 3 decades ago today, one of the most shocking massacres in Illinois history. Now, investigators and state police are speaking about the progress made since tracking down the killers who brought 7 lives to a cruel and callous end at a Brown's Chicken restaurant in northwest suburban Palatine.
It just kind of hits home, and then it isn't fake. Those bullets aren't fake. It isn't pretend. And it's frightening.
For 9 years, it was one of the most mystifying murders in Chicagoland. 7 people brutally killed on a cold January night, executed and piled up in a freezer.
I want to back that up for a second. I mean, this is the reality of it, folks. You have 2 young men that were teenagers, high school students. Lives were taken. You have the owner's wife, not only shot, but her throat was slashed. all for the equivalent of just under $4,000 in today's money. What kind of ruthless people does something like that? All 7 of these lives extinguished that night. For what?
Killed on a cold January night, executed and piled up in a freezer just minutes before closing time at Brown's Chicken Restaurant in Palatine 30 years ago. An act of wanton disregard for human life, sparking fear, pain, and a purpose for police departments across the state to collaborate to catch the killers responsible.
It was a lot.
This is what I was talking about with the police coming together as a task force, because departments singularly, unless you're, like I said, a big department like Chicago, you don't have the big resources backing you up to take care of these kinds of things. It is coming together as the smaller departments, you're able to come together and pool things together and start moving forward with cases where you otherwise would have been at a standstill.
Departments across the state to collaborate to catch the killers responsible.
It was a lot of work and a lot of grief for a lot of people.
Brian Opitz was one of the investigators called in that frigid night 3 decades ago, a crime more heinous than ever seen before in the northwest suburb, one that required more resources and the birth of a new system of cooperation.
This was, to be honest with you, the start of task force. Most every agency belongs now to some sort of task force, so that when something like this in the future happens, you got coppers from all different agencies, including, in our case, we had Chicago, we had state police, we had the FBI, we had everybody join us eventually. It was pretty incredible.
Opitz says
I mean, if this doesn't tell you how long ago this was, folks, you got people that are there on scene. You have investigators using Polaroid cameras to take the pictures. These guys to also tell you about how, how things were back then. They were actually using handle bags, the kind you'd get at a grocery store, that they were putting over their shoes so that they weren't contaminating the scene by bringing outside materials in on it. Now, this one I find kind of interesting. This person here doing the fingerprinting. Now, I've never, I went through the courses on how to do fingerprint scenes and stuff like that. I've never done it where this person is literally just slamming the dust on there. It's supposed to be very delicately done. And the reason for that is that you get the dust on there, get it on there just right, and it's going to be able to stick to the latent body oils that are on the surface there.
The height, there were at least 100 people working on the case, trying to track down the cold-blooded killers, but to no avail.
He looks like he's painting the door. Don't look like he's doing fingerprinting there. So, I mean, literally, I would take them, and the way they teach you is you put the brush in there, you spin it, and then you bring it out, and you're lightly dabbing it on. You're not sitting there just, what's he doing is, we're going to paint some happy trees here. Look at how happy that sunset is. This guy is just slapping it on.
Others today placed flowers in the snow outside the restaurant. Police, meanwhile, continue to say little about their investigation.
Then, a break. Human DNA from a piece of chicken with only 1 bite taken from the scene and preserved.
Ultimately, the chicken is what saved us in terms of, we had the foresight to freeze that. And like I said, it took 6 years before we got the DNA, but it took another 3 years after that before we figured out whose DNA it was.
9 long years.
But I got to tell you, that right there was such a smart move, freezing that piece of chicken and freezing the DNA that was on it. 6 years after the incident happened, they were able to finally pull DNA on it, but it took another 3 years before they could match it. What are you thinking so far there, Chad?
Oh, absolutely. In those days, they didn't have that technology, and that is very impressive.
I got to tell you, I remember those days because I'd literally been on the job like a year at that point. I remember those. We used to call them the roach cars, the Chevy Caprices back then. I remember when those first came out, how everybody was like, "Oh man, we love these new cars." They were the ugliest police cars we ever had. But I mean that is so reminiscent of here in Michigan where I worked. Because, we had these old, heavy, rear-wheel drive, big V8 motor cars and we're driving around in snow in them, you know. And I was so happy when our department, we had taken an S10 Blazer in as a forfeiture, and we put that out on patrol. And I just loved having that because half the guys couldn't make it to the calls when the snow was real heavy, but that little S10 Blazer, man, that thing would just truck right through it. So, all right, let's finish this up here.
Before a match was made with technology that didn't even exist at the time of the murders in 1993.
It was lucky that it was preserved, and it was preserved in such a way that we were able to extract that information.
Illinois State Police Deputy Director Robin Woolery oversees the Division of Forensic Services that handles DNA testing. And while she didn't work on the Browns case, she says the exponential advance of technology is responsible for the breakthrough, setting the bar for the future of forensics with more improvements on the horizon today.
We do analysis on touch DNA, where we're just using skin cells and we're able to get readable amounts of DNA to do analysis, all the way to rapid DNA, which is a lot of times what's being used in booking stations across the country. So the technology is amazing.
And Opitz says back in 2002, it finally caught up when the case broke wide open.
Once we got Luna's saliva and it came back to his DNA and the chicken, obviously all hell broke loose. It was joy to the extreme. At the time we went to Carpentersville to arrest Luna, then we had our detectives make the arrest out in Indianapolis of Degorski, and then both guys were brought in at the same time.
The convicted killers, Juan Luna and James Degorski, are now both serving life sentences with no possibility for parole.
Now, Illinois State Police say they're working to coordinate with genealogy testing companies and labs for even more new ways to track down killers.
And what's amazing about this is, did they find a reason why these guys actually ever did it? One of the things that happened is that when they were able to get the DNA, they brought Luna in and were questioning him, and he had confessed to it. But the problem is that it was a court ruling. Let's see, I'll just read what it says. Palatine Police Department took two suspects into custody on May 16, 2002. Luna confessed to the crime during an interrogation, though his lawyers later claimed he was coerced to do so through police brutality and had his family, who were Mexican nationals, threatened with deportation. Degorski also confessed, and an audio recording of it played during the trial, although his lawyers similarly contended that the confession was obtained under duress. Both men subsequently went to trial. The thing is what we're talking about here is we're talking about two people who, in cold blood, murdered 7 people, including 2 teenagers. The thing about it is that I think a lot of people need to play into it is that these 2 men didn't care about those people. When you think about the fact that not only did they take 7 lives in cold blood like they did so, the wife of the owner, they slashed her throat. What was the purpose of that? Why did those people need to die? Why did they do these kinds of things? What kind of person does this? And you have to wonder, what kind of society we have when we have people who do these kinds of things and they think that they've gotten away with it scot-free. They went on to live their lives. Degorski went to live in Indianapolis, Indiana. Luna remained in the greater Chicago area. There were no witnesses, unfortunately, because they killed everybody that was involved. Everybody that was there that could be a potential witness, they killed them. Well, that's the thing is we don't know. We don't know because they claim their innocence. And as far as I know, to this day, they still claim their innocence. Let's see. And I tried getting in to find out what what the prosecutors were saying was the reasoning behind it. And I believe that was what they were saying was that it was a matter of it was for drug money. But in 2014, Degorski was awarded $451,000 in compensation and punitive damages after being beaten by a sheriff's deputy in Cook County Jail in May 2002. He suffered facial fractures that required surgery. The deputy was eventually dismissed. And you can't. Here's the problem is, yes, I understand that this was very emotional. This was the kind of situation where you had such horrific things, but we're talking 9 years later and doing that, beating that man down like that. What was the purpose of it? What did he get out of it? And it was, And Cajun Mama, that is a really good point. Makes you wonder what they did before and after these murders. I think that walking around knowing that you're untouchable for that long, you would think that there was some kind of, feeling that they're invincible, that no matter what they do, they can't be caught. Let's see. Selena, Juan Luna used to work there. And everyone could identify him. So the dummy didn't think about, putting on a mask, doing something like that. Why did 7 people have to die for such a little amount of money? I mean, did it
right?
What's that, Chad?
Paul, in a typical, I've worked retail before. Every place that I've worked when I was younger, they just tell you, and it's never happened, thank God, but they just tell you, if we get robbed, you just give them all the money and tell them to take whatever product you want on the way out, and that'll be it. So this was what personal. It had to be. If he worked there, he didn't want to leave, any evidence of that it was him, or is that right or wrong?
I would think that he, having worked there, he knew, okay, they do this kind of money every day. So this should be a nice, easy hit for us. They go in, they do it. What I don't understand is when you do something like that and knowing that anyone there could identify you because you used to work there, why you didn't do something to camouflage yourself. That's what gets me. You didn't need to take those lives. And you've got to wonder about the, what kind of criminal history they had leading into this. What kind of people were they? And the problem is that there's a lot of work about the incident itself, but there isn't a lot of personal history on there.
Right.
Sorry, my allergies. From Mischief, if that a-hole worked there, he knew there wasn't tons of money there. Sick. Yeah. Well, the thing is, those kinds of places could have been making decent money. They could have just hit him on an off day or hit him at the wrong time. But having worked there, he should have known that how things would play out. There was no need for those lives.
Right. Yep.
It could have been 100,000. It still would have been horrific. Absolutely. I'm just talking about the fact that these two valued human life at such a low amount that this is what they were willing to do. Yeah, Selena, that's the thing is employees and former employees know all the closing procedures and things like that. And it's not like today where you literally put it into some kind of lockbox safe and it can't be open till the next morning, or it's handled a different way, those kinds of things. Back then, literally the owner of the place would shove all the money into an envelope and
Yep, that's right.
That's the thing.
And back then, sorry to cut you off, Paul. And back then, there was a lot, because I worked in retail years ago and recently, and back then there was a lot more cash, and nowadays it's roughly around 75% credit card, so the deposit's much smaller nowadays even.
Yeah, and Nikolai's got a good point here. If he had worked there, he may have had a grudge. Let's say he and his pal were drunk or under the influence. And Dave, I think it was about the killing, not the money. They wanted to kill.
Yep.
Very well. There are people that literally that's how they are, that they want to feel what it's like to take another life. And some people, they literally get intoxicated on that feeling itself, on that drive, on that want to do this. Let's see. I don't think the robbery was his motive. I think he may have had a prior beef with the owners and maybe the coworkers. But to kill them? To kill them? What kind of person? It makes me wonder if murder wasn't the prime. Yeah. I think we're all starting to lean over to that point where it seems like it's more or less a matter of they weren't there for the money because there was such little money that they got out of it, that it was more, you know, hey, come help me out with this. You can make a couple grand off of this. Or I know this place has generally got thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars at the end of the day. I mean, think about it from the point of Luna wants to take his grudge out on the folks there. He wants to make them pay. He needs somebody that he knows is hard up enough that they'll do it. Tells them that they will pay, you know, there's going to be tens of thousands of dollars in there. This is the day they go to the bank. They do it after they close up and all that. That person goes in there and then realizes that the money's not there that they thought was initially there. That sends them into a rage. Luna's got what he needs to get that person, to get Degorski fired up. And it's just a matter of just pulling the trigger from that point. Let's see here. I am friends with Michael Castro's older sister. I knew one of the victims personally. Wow.
Oh,
You know, I would have loved to talk to him, but I also don't want to, I didn't want to push it with the family. You know, they lost. They had to wait 9 years to get justice in the senseless killings, not deaths, senseless killings. And when they finally got it, I just don't want to reopen old wounds for them. I don't think that would be something I would want to bring into it. Sometimes they think owners. Okay. Owners have more money in a safe or have it hidden. Absolutely. But I think that's a pretty good point there. Is Luna wanted to grab some money, grab some cash, but also take out any kind of grudge or any kind of feelings that he had, take these people out, needed someone who he knew was hardcore enough that would do these kinds of things and do it, you know, without question, lies to him, tells him, yeah, they got tons of money. It's hidden everywhere in the place. The guy gets in there. They find out, but there's only a couple grand here. Guy goes off. Next thing you know, you got 7 people dead. When you think about the fact that the wife, Lynn, that her throat was slashed, that's not a randomized killing. All right. When everyone else died from gunshot wounds, but yet she died from her throat being slashed. That makes it a personal kind of thing. You don't just do that without it being a personalized kind of event. And that's, you know, so that I think that plays even more into the whole point of maybe Luna had some fixation on the wife. He wanted to, you know, he was, you know, he was interested in her romantically. She spurred his feelings. Who knows what went on there? But the simple fact that this woman not only perished like the rest of them, but she perished in such a grisly way, that tells me that there was something personal in this. Let's see, Selena, Mary Jane doesn't talk about her brother's passing. It's too hard for her. Yeah, see, that's why you know, there are a lot of people, screw it, I'm gonna, because they have, their voice deserves to be heard. I'm not playing that. I want to show respect to the families on these things. I'm going to give you my thoughts on things. I'll give you my opinions on things, but I'm not going to go out of my way to drum up things that are hard. Yeah, there you go. The comment, the woman who was killed was, yeah, that's what it makes me feel like when all the rest of them died from gunshot wounds, and she was the only one who died in that manner. Criminals aren't always the sharpest tools in the shed. No, they're not, Doug, but sometimes they are way sharper than the people who are investigating it. I can tell you that. I know some of them that are just absolute masterminds. Let's see here. Let's see and make sure we're hitting all these comments. There we go. Nissa, no amount of money is worth all that. No, none. And to take it down to such a low amount of money that you're willing to do that for just shows me that you're nothing but a depraved person, that there is something psychologically wrong with you. And howdy, Canadian girl. Thank you for being here. It's all right that you get in late. So, all right, folks, I want to hear your thoughts on these things. What do you think? You think we're on the right track here, that this was a personal thing that was set up by Luna, and that Degorski came in and it was a rage killing on his part because the money wasn't there that they thought it was going to be there? Or do you think it could be something else? I want to hear your thoughts, see what you think. Chad, what are you thinking?
Right. Yeah. Like I said, I agree that it sounds like it's very personal. And, I don't get it, like I said, because like I said earlier, a lot of times you just tell the people to, not that there's any excuse, of course, for what they did, but it could have been, usually you just tell them take the money, and that should have been good enough. They didn't have to do that to these people.
No, people didn't have to lose their lives. There was so many other ways they could have handled it. Yeah, personal, I think so. And Diana, we're talking about the Brown's Chicken Massacre out of Palatine, Illinois, in January 8th of 1993. Two men, Juan Luna, and what was the other guy's name? It was Degorski. James Degorski went into Brown's Chicken in Palatine, Illinois, in what appeared to be a robbery. When they did that, they ended up killing the 7 people you see pictured here, who were the 7 employees and owners of the company. You had the owner and his wife. Everyone died by a gunshot except for Lynn, who was the wife of the owner. She died because her throat was slashed and then she was shot. Jeez. And it took 9 years before they were able to come about with convictions on it. Juan Luna and James Degorski were the 2 men who were ultimately found. And one of the saving graces to it was they found a piece of chicken with 1 bite taken out of it. And the police were smart enough back then, let's freeze this piece of evidence. And we can, so hopefully when the technology comes about, we can get some kind of DNA, we can get some kind of trace evidence off of it that we normally wouldn't get. And so 7 years later, the girlfriend of James Degorski came forward, or was it Degorski? Well, the girlfriend of one of them came forward and said that, had details about it, led police to it. The police then were able to get a DNA sample from, and I think it was Luna that they were able to get the sample from, matched his DNA to the piece of chicken, which led to them arresting him. And then they went after Degorski, who had moved to Indianapolis at that point from Chicago area. They got a total of $1,800 to $1,900 cash from the robbery. And that was the equivalent of almost $4,000 in today's money. They turned around, they were living their lives, and now they're both in prison, both convicted of 7 counts of first-degree murder, and they were given life without the possibility of parole. And so we're just talking about how these cases come about, how these things are going on, and we were talking about the simple fact that Luna was a former employee of Brown's Chicken. And the really catchy point to me was the fact that Lynn, the wife of the owner of Brown's Chicken, she didn't die by gunshot like the other ones did. Her throat was slashed, then she was shot, which tells me that there's some kind of rage. There's something personal in that. And that's so that's what we're talking about tonight. And I'm at the point now where I'm asking everybody what their thoughts on it are. So Mischief, Selena said the owners had 2 daughters. They both lost their parents in one day. Is that not absolutely horrible? Think about being a child and having the police show up. I've been that police officers had to show up until someone that a family member had passed. You know, it's not good. Nikolai, my gut feeling is a revenge and rage, especially with the MO, was so specific in one case, makes you wonder if she was the last there before. Very well could be. And you know, think about how many cases never made it to arrests or conviction because of the lack of technology and then the lack of foresight on the part of the investigators in so many cases across this country and across the world during that time. Because you got to remember, DNA technology and those kinds of things, they're very recent. Fingerprinting is you know, only 100 or 200. It's early 1900s, you know, that fingerprinting actually became a realistic way of identifying people. And it's within the last 30, 40 years that now they're finding out that the retina is just as individual as the fingerprint on someone. So there are a lot of things that are going in with this, that are coming in with technology that were never there before. And you got to really hand it to investigators, detectives back in those days when they were literally working by the seat of their pants. If I went out and say I found like a cell phone at a scene and there's a big thumbprint right there, all right, I would dust that phone, get the print off of it, and what you're doing is literally you're taking carbon powder, all right, and you're taking a big fan brush and you're dipping it into the powder, getting it soaked up in there, and it's not like it's wet, but it's just clinging to the brush. And you're going to take that and you're going to lightly dab that on there and twist as you're dabbing. And that's going to leave the carbon residue in the oils left in the fingerprint. You're going to blow that off, blow off the excess, and then you'll take a piece of tape, a clear packing tape, style tape, put that over it, and you're going to lift that print off of there, and then it goes against a white background piece of almost like cardstock paper. You're going to take that, and what used to happen was it would go off to a central forensics lab, the state police or whoever handles it where you live, and they would literally have to go through and they would mark out identifiers within that fingerprint. They would take that fingerprint and then they would match it against hundreds of thousands of other prints, and they would have to manually do it with a jeweler's glass looking down onto these prints. They would look at those, look at the original, look at those, look at the original. And they had to get so many points of identification within those fingerprints because, like I said, every fingerprint is different, even from finger to finger. So it's very unique. Nowadays, they do the whole palm print. They even do the underpalm. They do footprints. Now they can do retina prints as well. Those work in identifying someone if you have, you know, clear enough imagery on it or for identification for entry into secured places. So what are you thinking there, Chad?
Yeah, like you said, the fingerprints scanning has come a long ways.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's
absolutely
incredible.
You know, and I don't know, John, if they did interview previous employees. They may have interviewed him and never got any indication of what was going on. I mean, this is just cold-blooded kind of person who does these kinds of things. They don't care. So they're not worried about, you know, oh, they're not going to catch me. They got to prove it and all this stuff. They may have been looking at Luna from the start, but never had enough to do anything with it. Doug, my daughter and husband were held hostage during a robbery at the restaurant they managed. It was linked to an employee grievance. I think that is what happened here. Very good point there. Let's see. They were in their 20s at the time of the murders, if memory serves me right. Talking about the daughters. They can get DNA from a bite of fried chicken. Absolutely. You got to remember, when you bite into it, all of the saliva, and you're going to get samples from the gums. All of that stuff is going to be there, and it's going to transfer into that piece of chicken. You can take a piece of bread, do the same thing. Any kind of food product that there is, it can happen. Let's see. Mischief managed. Okay. Wonder what else these two were responsible for. That's one of the things I've been talking about. A lot of people, you know, with condolences for Doug's daughter. Let's see here. Hey, Cupcake. We saw that you were in here earlier. We said hi to you. Yep, we'll see you tomorrow, Dusty. All right, let me see.
You know what I'm
here.
surprised with Poe? I'm surprised that when they wanted to arrest these two guys, I'm surprised they weren't already in jail for other stuff.
You know, that they may have had other what do you call it? Other arrests and convictions.
Yep.
And they, you know, that's just the problem with it is that they couldn't, they had no way of matching them to it. And you got to remember, taking DNA from a suspect is recent. I mean, it was just before that I had retired from the first department I worked for, that it became mandatory in the state of Michigan that you actually took a DNA sample from anyone who was arrested for a felony conviction. So I'm trying to pull up a picture here so I can show you folks how it actually works with the fingerprinting. So yeah, that'll work. All right. Let's see. All right. So what I'm going to show you here is I am going to show you a set of prints that, you know, one is an actual print, one is a diagram of how prints work, and I'm going to show you how these things work. Okay. So on the right would be an actual print, and they break it down into the actual how prints work. All right, there are swirls within your fingerprints. All right, some of them are double loopers, some of them are single loopers, some of them don't have loops, some of them have this little circle right in the center like the one on the left. Then you have your ridges. You have the very center portion of it is called the foreground, and then you have the ridges that come off from there. But what they're going to be doing is they're going to be looking at matching points on the fingerprints to other fingerprints. And it's changed over the years. It used to be X amount of matches that you had to have. You know, and that's the thing about it is that back in the day, before we had all this technology, literally it was someone with a jeweler's glass that was looking through. And unfortunately, you had to have the human eye had to do those kinds of things. Person's having a bad day, they're having something going on, they could miss with the fingerprints. That's why I like it with the automatic computer systems. As John was saying, the APHIS is what they used to call it. I forget what they call it now, but it used to be the automatic fingerprint identification system. And we went through something a different name when I was, when they came in with us, but APHIS was the original. Joe Gerst, fingerprints were first used to solve a crime in 1892 in Buenos Aires. A mom killed her two sons. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
I'm just wondering how that would work with proving that, 1903. Yeah. See what I'm saying is we're just talking in the last century. Yeah. Fingerprinting became a real thing. So the thing is that all this comes about. Cupcake, you knew both of them? Wow. Let's see. The case reminds me of the yogurt shop murders in Texas. That's the thing is a lot of these cases have a lot of similarities to them. Basically, 7 people died for $600 each in today's dollars. Heartbreaking. Actually, it was almost 4,000. When you do the conversion to today's money, it was 3,900 and some dollars. So basically like $1,400 a piece, 1,400 and change. It was very, very, it was not money. Wow. So you knew them and they wanted to do something big. Well, they certainly did. Cupcake, we were talking about the fact that it seemed like this would be something where there was something personal involved with it. It was simply with the wife of the owner and the fact that she wasn't just shot. Her throat was slashed on top of it. So I remember doing fingerprints in Boy Scouts to earn a merit badge many, many, many years ago. Yeah. And things have come, but the thing is even with DNA technology and all that, fingerprinting is your go-to. It's the first one you're going to do. So many more people have their fingerprints in the system. There are a lot of jobs. If you want to be a security guard, you got to get fingerprinted. You want to be a nurse. There's all these different jobs that they take your fingerprints to do a background check to make sure that you don't have any kind of criminal history in there that could make you ineligible to do the job.
Yep.
And the thing is that if you think that when they take your fingerprints that they just throw them away when they're done, no, your fingerprints go right into the system just like everybody else's. Whether you were a bad person or a good person, your fingerprints are in the system and you're not getting them out. There's been cases where they've ordered federal agencies to remove fingerprints from systems and they refused. So I'm sorry, everyone, but YouTube has a list of words they don't like. Please don't use the D word. Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Anna. Let's see here. We didn't have the baby steps of CODIS until 1990. My goodness, you're bringing up a name there, CODIS. It's been a long time since I saw that. Nikolai, I think the level of confidence in the prints and evidence has risen significantly, and never forget how some defense attorneys can argue away evidence. Absolutely. We've talked about that many times before, about how we were talking about it just in the Leilani Simon case, how the attorney got up there and, I mean, he looked like he had the bow tie and he looked like he should be smoking a corncob pipe. And well, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he got up there and he literally just started picking the prosecution apart right from the start. It's all coincidental. They don't have proof of this. They're going to say this, but in the end, you're going to see it didn't happen the way they say. And that, man, James Degorski was a jackie. He seems like he's a nice guy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, John, believe me, I remember when it would take up to 2 weeks, maybe even longer, depending on how backed up the system was. Now you run somebody's prints and you get the results back within 10 to 15 minutes. Let's see. I caught a lot of people with latent prints. Our biggest problem with latent prints that I had as a detective was that the state police were so overwhelmed with the amount of prints that were coming in that literally it had to be either some major kind of incident, or it had to be a very high dollar value, or it had to be something where serious violence was involved. Otherwise, they weren't doing them. So I'm just glad to see that the system is starting to come along a lot better now. Somebody in one department said, hey, you know what? Instead of sending them through the state police, why don't we just put this fingerprint we've got the latent print from, put that into the system and run that and see if it'll take it. And it did. And they were able to get a match off of that fingerprint through the system. So, you know, a lot of things are coming along. They're happening a lot quicker than they used to.
With the fingerprints, Poe, they don't joke around anymore. A little after the year 2000, I worked after the 2001 events in New York City. I worked at FedEx at the airport unloading planes and stuff, and they had to run our fingerprints through, and they did them the old-fashioned way and digitally. And they said it went through 3 FBI offices before we could go on the, on the airport. They weren't
my daughter,
joking.
It's been 2 years ago now, I think. She got a job at an airport, and she was literally, her job was to take people who were disabled or had some kind of mobility issues. And she was one of the people who put them in a wheelchair and took them right to the gate, or took them from the gate, took them to wherever they needed to be to catch their ride. She had to be fingerprinted that way.
Yeah.
And like you said, they're not just doing the digital prints. Well, what they do now with the digital prints is they're going to take your digital prints and then they're going to print off the FBI copy, the state police copy, all the ones that they need. And those have to be mailed out on top of the digital print being electronically served. It's amazing. Cupcake, this shocked the area. We all thought it was some kind of vendetta with the mob. And we've got some stuff we're working on with Joey, and hopefully we're going to be able to pull up some, we have some actual people that are former mafioso that hopefully we're going to be able to get onto the show, talking about how things were back in the day when it worked with the actual mob in the Chicago area. YouTube is censoring me again. How is tracking animal footprints bad? I didn't use a D word. It's a weird algorithm, Doug. It really is. You know, and I've talked about that before, how I would take my kids out and take them into the woods and show them what animal track signs, what trail signs are, you know, the different footprints, what they are. This is a bird, this is a feline, this is a dog, possibly a coyote, you know, and that's a good thing for people to know as well. The building is torn down now. They were saying that it's now a bank, if I remember correctly. Give me 1 second here. I'm looking because I saw something where it was like, it's a Chase Bank. So they went in and they built a Chase Bank over it. So that's wow. I live about 5 minutes from where the Brown's Chicken used to stand. The building has been torn down. Yeah. And it, like I said, I was looking on the, when I was Google searching about the location and things like that, it showed that a Chase Bank was there now. I was an official for the Youth Sports League, and I had to have a background check and fingerprints. Let me tell you, every year as the administrative executive lieutenant in my department, anyone who was getting hired by the school district had to come in and get their fingerprints done. And it all had to be done in a certain way, and it had to be typed up in a certain way, because if you just clicked the wrong button, it looked like they were being criminally charged. So
wow. Interesting.
Let's see here. Miss Sunrise Dawn's finally caught up. Grumpy old men. I used to live in that area when this happened. There were suspects, but they were never charged. It was torn down. Yeah. The Chase Bank is not the same building. Oh, okay. You know how well YouTube works on a lot of these things. So, all right, folks. So, you know, this is part of what we're looking at. You know, I know a lot of people would never go back to that building, Selena, just simply for what happened there. Tearing it down was probably the best thing that they could have ever done. Tear it down, let people's memories start fading on things, and then, you know, go in and try building something new there. But, you know, you got to give something like that 20, 30 years before you even start thinking about building on that, because people that were around and remembered what happened there, to them, that's cursed ground. And you're not going to be able to have a business that's going to do very well there. Although I think some people nowadays, they're, you know, they're kind of, they like that kind of stuff. Janelle. Yeah. Court officers get printed, police officers get printed, firefighters get printed. Now I can't see in every state, but I know in Michigan with that, we printed our firefighters, make sure that they had a clean background, those kinds of things. Nothing pleased me more than when I heard that James was crying in jail. My life is ruined. He was a horrible bully. You know, the sad thing about that is that him crying, really, you were part of a massacre and you want to cry now that your life is ruined. Like you didn't do anything for that. Good night, all. Been listening. Best wishes. Thank you, Davey. We appreciate you being here. All right. It used to be a cleaners for a while, then they tore the building down. Okay. All right, folks. So as always, thank you all for being here and being part of this. Chad, what's your closing thoughts on this?
Well, it was great to be here, and it was a very sad story, but I'm glad we talked about it and got the viewers' feedback from it.
Absolutely. And that's part of this, folks, is when we're doing these cold cases or we're doing these old cases, things like that, we want your feedback as well. We want to know what you think about things. I'd bring in the point of view from a retired law enforcement officer, Chad, as your common everyday person,
The layman
in society. Well, you know, with your attorney abilities and all that stuff, you know, but with the drinking as Stuttering John, that kind of weighs you down a little bit.
Yep.
But as always, folks, I see that our friend Alex over at Down the Rabbit Hole News is live. If you want to jump over and do a raid on Alex, by all means, you don't have to stay there for the whole thing. Just jump in, say hi, and hit the like. Help support a fellow channel, someone who has been a friend of the channel and of the SPTV community. And as always, folks, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate each and every one of you. And as always, life is short. You get one shot. Make it count.